All right, let's jump right into this explainer because we're looking at something absolutely fascinating today. We're exploring how the exact same ancient text can literally create completely different realities, entirely depending on how you read it. Seriously, if you've ever wondered how different groups can look at the exact same book and walk away with wildly distinct worldviews, well, you're in the right place. We're going to move past the old medieval tradition, the one that focused heavily on theology and church tradition, and instead we're looking at a much more modern, philosophical approach to reading Scripture. These modern categories are all about human intellect, consciousness, personal empowerment, and social transformation.
So think about it like this. Imagine looking at a book and realizing that the specific glasses you're wearing to read it are actually doing more heavy lifting in shaping its meaning than the actual words printed on the page. That's exactly what we're unpacking today. It's actually less about what the text says and so much more about the framework of the person reading it. It is a brilliant reminder that, when it comes down to it, interpretation really is everything.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're covering one text through 4 distinct lenses. We'll start with the academic style, then move into the metaphysical style, check out the spiritual power style, explore the existential style, and then finally compare all these perspectives side by side.
All right, kicking things off with lens 1, the academic style, which is all about stripping away centuries of dogma.
When you put these specific glasses on, the text isn't a spiritual guide, not at all. It's strictly treated as an ancient historical artifact from the Near Eastern or Greco-Roman world. The core question for this type of reader is super straightforward. What did the author actually write and why? To get to the bottom of that, this approach treats the text purely as a collection of ancient literature. For the person wearing the academic glasses, personal faith is completely set aside. The whole shebang here is to analyze the text through the incredibly objective lens of rigorous scholarship, science, and history. And you have to realize just how forensic this gets. Using this highly analytical approach, scholars lock in on ancient languages. We're talking Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. They're digging through the ancient dirt with archaeology, and they are meticulously tracking every little text alteration over time. Their entire mission is to strip away all those centuries of church dogma that have been layered on top of the text over the years. They just want to figure out what the text originally meant in its actual ancient environment, way before anyone else got their hands on it.
A perfect example of this in practice is the book of Isaiah. An academic reader isn't sitting down with this for their morning devotional, right? Instead, they're looking for subtle shifts in vocabulary. They're cross-referencing historical events mentioned in the text to actively investigate its true authorship. They are basically trying to solve a giant puzzle. Was this book written by a single prophet, or is it actually a compilation created by 3 entirely different authors over the span of several centuries? It's a purely intellectual and historical investigation.
Moving right along to lens 2, the metaphysical style, acting as a map of human consciousness.
Now we are doing a complete 180 and pivoting entirely inward to the mind with the metaphysical style. This was really popularized by movements like New Thought, Christian Science, and Unity. Here, the Bible isn't physical history whatsoever. The driving question is, what internal, mental, or spiritual state does this represent? So everything in the text, the people, the cities, the ancient battles, it's all viewed as an internal symbol of the human mind. For instance, looking through this lens, Egypt isn't a historical place on a map. It represents a state of material or limited thinking. And on the flip side, the Promised Land isn't real estate. It represents achieving a higher state of spiritual consciousness.
To really cement just how different this approach is, let's look at the classic story of David and Goliath. A literal reading obviously sees a real boy fighting a physical giant in an actual ancient battle. But the metaphysical interpretation completely flips the script. To them, David represents the human mind utilizing the power of divine thought, while Goliath represents a massive, seemingly insurmountable negative belief or fear. So the story has absolutely nothing to do with an ancient war. It's actually a psychological blueprint for overcoming your own internal fears. It's just a total reimagining of what the text is even for.
Okay, on to lens 3, the spiritual power style. This one is a catalyst for the supernatural.
The energy completely shifts gears here as we look at the highly dynamic spiritual power style. You'll frequently find this in charismatic, Pentecostal, and word of faith traditions. The core question driving this reader is, how do I activate this promise in my life right now? So rather than just studying words or digging up historical facts, this approach treats the text as a set of active, living tools. The entire focus is on manifestation, faith declarations, and spiritual warfare. The reader actually uses the text to decree reality, break spiritual strongholds, and invite divine blessings and miracles directly into the physical world.
The crucial takeaway here is how these readers interact with a specific verse. Let's bring Isaiah back in.
Isaiah 53:5 says, "By his wounds we are healed." Now remember, our academic reader from earlier, they just wanted to figure out who wrote Isaiah. But a spiritual power interpreter, they don't care at all about historical authorship, and they certainly don't view this as some dusty past event. Instead, they will declare this phrase out loud as a current, binding spiritual law. They claim it to actively shift their reality and command physical healing in their own body right now, in the present moment. For them, the text is a literal mechanism for supernatural power.
And that brings us to lens 4, the existential style, which views the text as a manual for justice and lived truth.
Heavily popularized by liberation theology in Latin America and Black liberation theology here in the United States, this style looks at everything through the lens of lived human experience, systemic oppression, and social struggle. The core question they're asking is, how does this text challenge oppression and change society? Taking a deeply grounded and serious view, this style anchors the text in collective transformation. Proponents of this style assert that God inherently sides with the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed. So real-world freedom and justice are the ultimate goals here.
Notice how this completely transforms one of the most famous stories out there, the Exodus. A traditionalist might read the Exodus story simply as a nice religious lesson on obedience to God. But a liberation interpreter puts on their glasses, looks at the exact same words, and sees something entirely different. They read a revolutionary text that they interpret as absolute proof that God actively despises political and economic tyranny. To them, the divine will is the physical liberation of enslaved peoples. It essentially becomes a modern manifesto for social justice.
All right, let's compare these perspectives and bring all of these lenses together. Seeing them all side by side like this really helps us appreciate how wildly the picture shifts. Depending on your style, this exact same ancient text transforms completely. For the academic, it's a historical artifact, and they're just asking what the author wrote. For the metaphysical reader, it's a map of human consciousness, and they want to know what internal state it represents. For the spiritual power reader, it's this dynamic catalyst for the supernatural, asking how to activate its promises today. And for the existential or liberation reader, it's a manual for justice, asking how it challenges systemic oppression. 4 distinct lenses, creating 4 entirely different realities, all constructed from the exact same words on a page.
Which leaves us with a final thought to take away from this explainer today. What glasses are you wearing when you interpret information? Whether it's an ancient text, a news article you scroll past, or just a conversation with a friend, we all have a default lens. The real question is, are you aware of yours, and how much is it secretly constructing the world around you?